year after year. And he's been doing it about 39 out of 41 years, he says. So we've been doing it over and over and over and over. And it's a good example of how once you volunteer for something, you could be there for a while. David Goodrow.
It's not easy being a tradition. Sometimes it's damnably confusing. How many people out there don't know what I'm about to do? Raise your hand. Oh, good. The rest of you keep quiet until it's over. As he said, this has become a tradition. God help me, I love it. A Scotsman clad in kilt left a bar one evening fair, and one could tell by how he walked he'd drunk more than his share. He fumbled around until he could no longer keep his feet. Then he staggered off into the grass to sleep beside the street. Ring-ding-dee-dee-dee-dee-o, ring-di-dee-dee-I-o. We staggered off into the grass to sleep beside the street. Now about that time, two young and pretty lassies happened by, and one says to the other, with a twinkle in her eye, "See yon sleeping Scotsman, so strong and handsome built. I wonder if it's true what they don't wear beneath the kilt. Ring-ding-dee-dee-dee-dee-o, ring-di-dee-dee-I-o. I wonder if it's true what they don't wear beneath the kilt." Now they crept upon that sleeping Scotsman, quiet as could be. They lifted up his kilt about an inch so they could see, and there, behold, for them to view beneath his Scottish skirt, was nothing more than God had graced him with upon his bird. Ring-ding-dee-dee-dee-o, ring-di-dee-dee-I-o, was nothing more than God had graced him with upon his bird. Now they marveled for a moment. Then one said, "We must be gone. Let's leave a present for our friend before we move along." So as a gift they left a blue silk ribbon tied up in a bow. Around the bonny star the Scotsman's kilt did lift and show. Ring-ding-diddle-diddle-I-o, ring-di-diddle-I-o. Around the bonny star the Scotsman's kilt did lift and show. The suspense is terrible. Now the Scotsman woke to nature's call and stumbled towards the trees. Behind a bush he lifts his kilt and he gawks at what he sees. And in a startled voice he says to what's before his eyes, "Oh, lad, I don't know where you been, but I see you won first prize. Ring-ding-diddle-diddle-I-o, ring-di-diddle-I-o. Oh, lad, I don't know where you been, but I see you won first prize." Thank you.
So I'm going to give you guys a tip. Years and years and years ago, we didn't have the kind of people helping us with the lighting and the sound and getting everything together like we do now. And the way I heard the story is that years ago, there was a festival going on. And because we didn't have that kind of crew, Finley went and got David and said, "Hey, we're not ready to start the festival yet. We're not ready for the concert yet. Just go out there and entertain the folks." And 45 minutes later, they started the festival. But we don't have that problem because we've got joyful noise here, Ronnie Tanner and Bobby Klaus. So you guys need to, if you really know how good these guys are, then you can't really sit down on your butt and clap for them. Because the backdrop, the stage, they build all this stuff. And you know what? They're retired. We are their only job, and they drive all the way from, Florida or East Jesus? One from Florida and one from Tyler. Who else does that? Standing ovation, please. Last year we gave them certificates, but standing ovations are a little cheaper. So thank you guys. Hey, you guys may have noticed that I did change clothes earlier, and I put on this real fancy hot sweater jacket, and it is hot as can be. But my friend Hank Rubicek, wherever he might be, he had one on last year, and I told him I was going to make sure I had one on this year. So Hank, wherever you are, I'm dressing just for you, okay? My fellow award winner. Stand up, Hank. Yeah, there you go. Okay, guys. One thing that I've heard about our festivals is that they're good, they're organized, that they flow well, okay? And we're very, 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 very fortunate to have the tellers that we have tonight and that we've had all weekend. One thing that I've learned about them is that they know each other so well, they're like family. They've known each other 20, 30 some odd years. I mean, they hang out with each other's spouses and stuff. They go visit each other overseas, across the water. I mean, that's why they flow so well together. So we're going to be flowing together well with them tonight, but I want to let you know how things will go, okay? We're going to have 2 tellers, okay? We're going to have an intermission so that you guys get a little bit of a break. And just so I can tease you, after the intermission, we're going to have Kathy Comer come up and we're going to do an award. But if you don't stay to after the intermission, you won't know about the award. So you got to stay for that part, okay? And then we're going to have the 2 tellers close it out, okay? Everybody good with that? So all we're going to do is listen to these guys tell stories, take a quick break, come back and listen to some more stories, right? Now, one thing that I learned long time ago is that the more important you are, the less is said about you in your introduction. If you're really not that important, they talk about he's got a degree from this place, a degree from that place, he grew up over here, he did this, that, and the other. But the more important you are, the less they will say. So, for example, if you take the president, you never hear him talk about where he went to high school, where he went to college, no awards that he won, nothing like that, right? All they say is, Mr. Speaker, the President of the United States, right? They don't even say his name. Well, since you guys didn't come to hear me, all I'm going to do is tell you their name, okay? So, TSA. Storytellers, one and all, people who love just to laugh and hear a good story. Liz Warner.
Just bring it down. He's coming. Hello? You still with me? Howdy. Somebody said that to me. People said, yee-haw. Thanks very much. Well, good evening. It's amazing how many stories I can get into 20 minutes, but we'll see. Yeah. Where I live is the top northeast corner of Ireland. Very beautiful part of the world. And years ago, most of the land around where I live was owned by a family called MacDonald. And my story concerns a young man from that family who used to go walking along the shore. One moonlit night, as he walked along that shore, he met a beautiful woman in the moonlight. They met constantly, every night, and he fell in love with her. And it turned out she was a sea king's daughter. Her father was Weir, the sea god. And he persuaded her to give up her life of immortality to live with him on the land. Her father was displeased, but she was happy. They had several children. But unfortunately, as happened in the story I think I told yesterday, after the last baby was born, the young woman took a fever and she died. And so she was buried there in the old graveyard, which some people in the audience have actually been to, that slopes down to the sea. Well, the Sea King was so displeased at the thought of his daughter's body trapped on the land that he commanded the white-toothed waves to gnaw at the shore, and he pulled that graveyard down, down, down under the waves. But he made a deal with the MacDonald family that if any of them died, all they had to do was carry the coffin down to the white shingle, and he would send people to bear it down to the graveyard under wave. And so it happened. Year after year after year, whenever somebody from the family died, they had a wake, and then they brought them down and set the coffin there. And then in the morning it was gone. Well, after one particularly good wake, with a lot of drink taken, a young man called Connor decided he would see if this was actually true. And he took a bottle of whiskey and hid behind some rocks and watched. He watched as 4 strong men carried that coffin down and set it on the white shingle. And he waited for night to fall. Darkness came down and the moon rose. And as he sat there watching, in the moonlight, he saw 4 tall figures with long hair emerge from the water. He heard a sort of moaning and incantation, and then he heard words. What was our king thinking to command us to bring down the men of the earth into our realm? And the other said, but if ever mortal eye shall see or mortal ear shall hear, the curse will be lifted on us. And just at that point, as they were hoisting the coffin up, Connor kicked a rock. 4 heads turned, saw him, and they disappeared into the sea. That was the last coffin to be taken down there. But if you come to County Antrim, and I hope you will come, and you go out in a boat, and you look down, down under those beautiful green waters, you will see gravestones, you will see crosses of the graveyard under wave. Some of my favourite stories. I've been sort of debating, we'll do that one, we'll do this one, what we'll do. But there's one I want to tell you about. Yesterday or the day before, I talked about the banshee, the woman who, when she cries, it means somebody's going to die. Now, you've heard of the sirens, you've probably heard of the Lorelei. Well, in Ireland, we have a fairy woman. She's called a Lananshee. And if she sets her eye on a mortal man, that's him gone. Gone. Use any word you like, bewitched, entranced, all those sort of words. There was a young fisherman who was coming home over the cliff tops near Ballintoy when he was followed by a Lananshee, a fairy woman. She came after him, sighing and crying and tugging at his coat, and he knew if he looked into her eyes even once, he'd be gone. So he pulled his cap down, he stood stock still. She sighed and she cried, he paid her no heed. And finally she left, and he walked home over the cliff tops, but he saw her in the distance, burying something under a tall standing stone. So he went home. He put salt in this pocket, iron in the other. That's a tip for you, to get rid of the fairies, or to keep them away from you. And he went back and he dug under that big stone, and he found a casket full of gold, fairy gold. And he brought it home and he buried it under a rowan tree, magical tree. Night after night, she came sighing and crying. He thought, will she give me no peace? Now, this young man was handsome, tall, black curly hair, long black lashes, broad shoulders, narrow waist. Young men like him were, and sadly still are, as rare as hen's teeth. All the girls liked him. He thought, well, maybe if I get married. And there was a girl, her name was Nancy. Her father kept a pub. He proposed, she accepted. He had to go to her father, you'll not be marrying him. No. All he's got is a thatched roof that wants mending and a scattering of old sheep. But Randall mentioned gold. Gold, the only gold you'll ever see is on the buttercups. But when he opened the chest, the father's eyes gleamed. That's treasure trove. You could get into trouble. Listen, marry my daughter, I'll look after the gold. The match was made. He brought the girl home, and the first night the wailing started outside. What's that? Shh. Love, it's only the wind. He pulled the curtains. She got sort of used to it. But when they'd been married 6 months, her mother took ill and she had to go and nurse her, and Randall came home from his work the first night, slumped down the chair, no curtains pulled, fell asleep, and all of a sudden he was jolted awake by a long, lonely cry. When he looked out the window, he was locked into the gaze of the fairy woman. He followed her off to the land of fairy. He stayed there with her for 7 years, though to him, just like one night. When he came back, he looked into his own house, and there was his Nancy sitting by the fire, and she was rocking a cradle. And there was another man in his seat. He walked in. "Nancy, I'm home, love." She gave a cry. "Get out of my house, old man." No, it's me. "Randall, your husband?" "Oh, no," she said, "no. My handsome young husband was drowned in the sea 7 years ago. I waited 5 years before I married John Eyre. Oh, if you've seen my husband was so handsome, with his long black hair." Randall looked in a mirror above the fire, and he saw to his horror that his black hair had turned snowy white. He had lines etched in his face and a haunted look in his eyes. And when he looked into that mirror, what did he see reflected back from the window outside but the smiling face of the Lananshee, the fairy woman? He ran out of that house. He was never seen again. As for the gold in the box, when Nancy's father opened it, all there was a handful of copper beech leaves. For they say it would nearly be better for a man to be drowned in the sea than to look in the face of a Lananshee. For after that, there's nothing for him but wandering. For the face of the Lananshee is, worse than a dream, and her song is lonelier than the seabird's call. Probably my favourite story now, and I heard it first, believe it or not, in Seattle, Washington. That's the way it goes. There was once a young fisherman who lived on an island off the coast of Ireland. He and his wife had a baby boy, and you'd think nobody had ever had a child before. The young man was so proud of that baby. He'd take him for walks, he'd feed him, he'd change him. This was long before young men did that sort of thing. He'd carry his baby down to the shore and he'd say, "When you're big, me and you'll go fishing." His wife heard that. She said, No, my child's not going to go fishing. Too dangerous, no. The baby would smile. And the husband knew they had an understanding, though the wife said it was just wind. The young man played his part, looked after that child. And when he was about 6 months old, a messenger came. The young woman's father had fever. She said, I can't go. I can't go to a house with fever, can't bring the baby. He said, what are you talking about? The fishing season's almost over. No, you go on, I'll look after him. Don't feed him, change him, take him for walks. And it was true, he'd done all that. So he said, you run on. And he was as good as his word. He was a devoted father. But the next morning there was a knock at the door. Another young fisherman said, are you coming out? It's about the last good day's fishing we're going to get. No, I said, I can't. You see, I've got the baby. Bring the baby out. No, Mary would kill me if I brought the baby out. Look, we'll just go out for half an hour. I have a place we can keep him safe. He says, sleeping? Oh, he's sleeping. How long will he sleep? Oh, a couple of hours. Bring him, he'll be fine. So they wrapped the sleeping child in a blanket, put him in the boat, rowed to the northern tip of the island where there was a big sea cave. They carried him in, they set him up in a rock, and they put stones around him. He couldn't even fall off, he'd be fine. He was a sound sleeper. And the two young men went out to fish, and they were going grand. They knew 15 minutes out, 15 minutes back. Everything went well until they turned to come back. The wind changed. The sea started to boil up. The two young men were fighting to get back to that cave, but a big wave caught them, tipped them up into the sea. When the fisherman opened his eyes, he was lying on the pier. His wife was looking down at him. Where's my baby? He could only shake his head. She didn't speak to him. For 3 days and 3 nights, that storm raged, and they waked that child. They were sure he was gone. And when at last the wind dropped and the sea became like a mirror, the young woman turned and spoke to her husband for the first time. Find my baby. Bring him home. And he stepped into that boat It was like a mill pond, it was so smooth. And he rowed up to that cave, pulled the boat up, stepped inside, there was a movement, only a seal suckling her young. He stepped over to the rocks and his heart went sideways, for all that was there was the blanket. He gathered it, how could he bring this back to her? But as he came to the mouth of the cave, didn't the seal slip off the rock, leaving behind no seal pup, but the baby, with the milk of the seal round his lips. He wrapped his child in the blanket, he set him in the boat, he rowed for shore, and up into his wife's arms, he set a happy, gurgling bundle of joy. And if the wake had lasted 3 days, the party on that child's return lasted a full week. And ever after that, no man on that island ever killed a seal. Thank you.
Another round of applause for Liz.
Yes.
Hey guys, I can't see very well up here, but I want to make sure that you know something about our sponsors because they make it possible for us to do all of this. So let me tell you about our platinum sponsors. We've got the Texas Folklore Society. We've got Betsy Mosier, the National Endowment of Arts, the Texas Commission of Arts, J.B. and Judith Keefe, Denton Benefit League, Tim Couch, the City of Denton, Dennis and Emily Brock, and yours truly, Michael Grundy, our platinum level sponsors. And our silver level sponsors are the tip tellers in honor of Fred Pillar. And for our bronze level, we have the San Antonio Storytelling Association, Vanessa Rogers, and they say congratulations to the rising star, Vanessa. And then we have a bunch of copper level and community level and just in-kind level and all types of folks who make this possible. So put your hands together for all the folks that make it possible, guys. If it wasn't for those folks, then you would have had to pay about $300 or $400 per ticket. So be really grateful for those people, okay? So you can clap again, okay? Yeah, clap again. Okay. So ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, ears, hearts, Joe. When you just say their first name, you know they really are somebody sharp. It's Joe.
Wow. I got to tell you something. I don't think I've told folks this before. In my book back there, which I talked about this afternoon, it opens with a quote from Isaac Bashevis Singer, which is, "In the world of stories, nothing is lost. In the world of stories, nothing is lost." And that had been there in a while, and somebody said, where exactly did he say that? And of course, if you were here this morning, I was talking about the Helm stories, Zlata the Goat by Isaac Bashevis Singer. Love his writing. And I looked, and it turns out he never said that. I made it up and attributed it to him accidentally. I didn't realize that. So that's what that's about. But then I found myself also wondering, is that true? And I was thinking of that last night. Who was here last night? So last night I told the story of luck or wisdom. We talked about luck or wisdom, and I mentioned how it's one of the ways to be wise is just think of something smart and don't say it. And in the middle of telling the story about the wood carver, there was a tailor, a wood carver, and a teacher. In the middle of telling the story about the wood carver, I happened to just riff a little on wood carving and mention, just offhandedly, that Dalton had carved this ugly piece of thing that was over there, and you should not go look at it, this bowl, because obviously I had bid on it, because I had fallen madly in love with it. It was this kind of beautiful offering bowl. And from the moment I saw it, I thought, I should just buy this, but I'll do this right, and I'll bid on it. And I bid on it, and I was checking. And I wanted to make sure that nobody was going to bid on it. And it could be that my saying that was not that wise a thing to say. Because afterwards, I went over to the silent auction to see if anybody had bid on it, and it was gone. And I thought, well, in the world of stories, nothing is lost. But, and I thought, yeah, I'll make a story out of this. And so it's been pretty much a perfect weekend. And a perfect weekend as it is squeezed so far between Friday the 13th, the Ides of March, and Pi Day, right? That's what we have in the lineup this week. And I thought, it would be asking, it was too much to ask that I could bring that beautiful offering bowl. I wanted to give as a gift to a friend who I knew would really appreciate it. And I should have just bought the darn thing and been done with it. But I thought, I shouldn't have mentioned it. And as my wife could easily tell you, this would not be the first time I opened my mouth and said something that didn't need to be said. Anybody, storytellers, find themselves doing this? So it's been utterly fabulous, except for that little fly in the ointment. And then just a little bit ago, a fellow named Kyle came up and said, "Oh, I got something for you." And he handed me this, and he said, "This is a gift to thank you." This offering bowl, and I gotta say, the generosity of that is only matched by the generosity of spirit of everyone I've met here. It really is. Generosity is what makes storytelling work and go around. And I just am so grateful to be able to have this beautiful Dalton. And in case somebody thought, what, you didn't like Dalton's woodwork that you had to insult? No, I loved it. So there it is, this beautiful offering bowl. It just comes nicely to the hand. So got to thinking about a story I could tell. And I have to mention, I've been telling stories since before this festival began. I started back in '83, traveling around the world telling stories. And even as I began, I felt a little jealous of other tellers who seemed to come from interesting places, right? Like, look what we got. Here we got Lynn from Appalachia. You know, it's not a rich area, but it's an area rich in stories, right? How many great storytellers have come from Appalachia? A lot, right? And then I thought about Alton, growing up in Hawaii, and just that colorful, rich Pacific Island life that he has there. And that I thought that's really rich. And then Liz in Ireland. In Ireland, everything's a story. Every rock and hill and beach and coast is a story. Every word is a story. And with an Irish accent, everything sounds like a story. There is, at the Cape Clear Festival, there's a friend of mine named Paddy O'Brien, and he teaches, each time I've been there, he teaches a course. I performed with him the first year. I fell in love with his voice. He is literally somebody who could say, "So, shall I read the phone book then?" I say, "Please." And he's saying, "No, shall I start with O's?" I say, "No, start with A. I want the whole thing." And so he always teaches a course in the Irish language, and every time I've been to Cape Clear, I go and I try to learn a few more words, and I learned just two words, and it says about storytelling. One is how to say thank you very much when you're introduced on stage. It was a good thing to say to an Irish audience, which is to say, "Gule mille mache gut." It's not an easy language to pick up. And that translates like 1,000 thanks. The other one is smuglerruin. Smuglerruin. They say it with me? Smuglerruin. And he says, smuglerruin, this is a good Irish word. Shows you how your Irish meant things. Ruin. Ruin you might know. Ruin you might know. For it's like the secret of ruin Inish. Right? Like a seal or a sea lion. And smuggler is the word for snot. Smuggler. And you can say it's a good, everyone say it with me. Smuggler. Let's see the sign for snot. Joel's the best. Everybody for Joel. So he said, it's the word seal. Snot is the word for jellyfish. Because you can see, you go to the beach then, and as you go to the beach, after a storm, what do you see? But all over the beach, it looks like seal snot. And yet, in the water, in the water, they're so graceful. And in the pandemic, some of us just turned on the jellyfish channel and watched them. You've seen them in the water? They're so beautiful. So there's Ireland, where Liz comes from, and it's like, everything's a story. Everything sounds good. And I grew up not in those places. I grew up in what seemed to me like the least interesting place on earth. The suburbs of the suburbs of the suburbs of Los Angeles. Ours was a square grid in all directions. There was, instead of mountains, there were mountains to the north, but we couldn't see them for the smog. And what we had as our landmarks was you go north and there's the 210. You go east and there's the you go east and there's the 5. And then there's the 205, and then you go west, you go down south and there's the 10, and then way over there is the 101. That was our boundaries, right? Nothing natural. And growing up there, I thought, why am I growing up here? My parents grew up in Cleveland. That was interesting. And the suburbs of LA seemed like this endless time. But the hard part was getting around. Because as a 12-year-old kid, to get anywhere, I had to take the bus. Anybody grow up in the suburbs of LA here? Couple? Yeah? How are the buses? Horrible. She's shaking her head back there. The buses in LA, it was called the Rapid Transit District, but everyone called it the Rancid Transit District. Did anyone see that movie Speed? Where a bus would explode, it went under 50 miles an hour. In truth, they would explode if they went over 50 miles an hour. But they never went over 10, because when you're on a bus and you're a kid and you have to get somewhere in LA, you're going, and the bus is going, and you come to a red light, what do? And then you come to a green light, what do? You stop because there's a bus stop, and by the time somebody gets on the bus stop, it's there, and these buses were hot. They were hot because two reasons. One, they had fake air conditioners, and they were meant to look like air conditioners, but they didn't actually work. So you were supposed to open the window, but they also had fake windows that didn't open. So there were these things like down the street in this way, just slowly. And as a kid, I was stuck on these buses, and I would look out the buses, and in LA, cars are sacred. So what do you see? Porsche, Corvette, Alfa Romeo, bus. And I remember once I went to go visit a friend in downtown LA, a friend I'd made at camp. It took 3.5 hours to get there on 3 buses. We had an hour together, 3.5 hours to get back. And I got back, I said, Mom, Dad, this is ridiculous. I'm wasting my life on these buses. You have to buy me a car. They said, that is out of the question. I said, why? They said, you're 12. So I was stuck riding the buses. And I remember once as I was riding the bus, it was sort of near downtown LA, near the Fairfax district, the old Jewish district, and the farmer's market, if you know that area. And I'm riding the bus, and it's just the longest slog of a ride, right? So I get on the bus, first of all, and I'm pissed at having to ride the bus. And so what do? I get on the bus, throw my quarter in, and then go back, and I sit in the seats reserved for elderly and handicapped. And as it turns out, everybody else got off the bus. It was just me in the seats reserved for elderly and handicapped, sitting waiting. We come to a red light. What do? Green light. What do? And then the green light turns red, and then green, and then red again. And like we're stopping several cycles here. This is just going on, till finally I see what's taking so long, which is this elderly man carrying a grocery bag is climbing onto the bus very slowly, and he says to the driver, "How much is it?" The driver looks at him, definitely a senior citizen, said, "A quarter. 25 cents. Yeah, quarter. 5, 10, 11, 12, that's it. I see my whole life passing before me as the lights going from green to red. And finally, Mr. Elderly Handicap flips all his coins, 25 cents in the thing, and then, without looking, just backs up to the elderly handicap seats. And he's about to sit on my lap. I scoot over by the window, and he sits down right next to me. We're the only two on the bus now, and the bus is lumbering along, and it's a little awkward, and I'm sort of looking away out the window, and I can feel him looking at me. And as he does, as he looks at me, it's, how that feeling of somebody looking at you? It's an awkward feeling. And finally, I look towards him, and when I do, he reaches into his grocery bag and pulls something out and holds it up. And I look at him, and he says, "What do you think?" Of course, it wasn't this orange. This was when I was 12, and I looked at it and I said, "Well, I think it's an orange," which was a complete answer. Well, an honest answer, but not a complete answer, because the complete answer would have been, "I think it's an orange. I think you're kind of a weirdo. Get away from me." And he said, "Yes, it's an orange, but what do you think of it?" So I took the orange, I looked at it, and I said, "Well, it's a navel orange, no seeds. It's kind of green here, but it's probably orange inside, and it's, even if it was all orange, you'd call it if it's all green, you'd call it an orange, not a green, but it's an orange." And I gave it back to him, and I scooted close to the window, though there wasn't much room to go. And he looked at it for a long time. And finally he said, You don't understand, do you?" And he was right, because I had no idea what the heck he was talking about. And he said, "You don't know, I'm not from around here." Duh. He said, I came here after the war." "You know about the war?" I say, "Yeah, and I got to say, when I was a kid, when people talked about the war, it was pretty clear. They were talking about World War II. That was the war. Got a lot more wars to talk about since then." He said, "I came here after the war." He said, "Did you learn about the war in school?" I said, "Yeah, I did." I said, he said, "Did you learn about where I came from in the school?" I said, "Where did you come from?" He said, I came from, in the war, in a place that was called Auschwitz. You heard of it?" And it turns out that I had one textbook in school, was the only textbook I had that even mentioned the word Jew, and it had a black and white picture of the gates of Auschwitz, and it said, "Arbeit macht frei, work will make you free." And there was a caption that said, "This was the gates of Auschwitz. During World War II, the Nazis killed 6 million Jews." And I said, yeah, I saw a picture in my book of that gate. I saw that gate in Auschwitz. Work will make you free. And he lit up. He said, when you learned about it, did they teach you it was black and white? And I said, well, no, the picture was black and white, but the place wasn't black and white. He said, no, it was black and white. He said, you see, the guards wore black uniforms, and the snow would fall, and it would be white for a day. And then the ashes from the smokestacks would fall and turn the snow gray. We wore uniforms, paper uniforms, pressed paper, black and white. And we would stand in long lines for the food. The food was gray. A barrel, maybe with 3 or 4 potatoes cooked till they dissolved, a scoop of this was what we were given for the day. If you got a little bit of potato, you were lucky. Here, look. And now he pulled up his sleeve, showed numbers on his arm. He said, the numbers, now they're blue, but when they burned them in, they were black. Everything was black, white, gray. The sky was gray. And I spent the days when I had a moment trying to stay warm, trying to keep alive. And I looked for paper. Because our clothes were made of paper, I could put it in my clothes if I found it. And shoes, I could patch them with paper in the shoes. And it's one day I walked near the fence, the gates, and I look in there in the gray snow is a large piece of paper. I pick it up. Beneath it, the snow is perfectly white. And in the snow, there's something. I look at it, you see, I had forgotten that color. I saw what it was. I knew what I had to do. I fell down. Because I knew when a Jew fell, they just laughed and looked away. I took it, I hid it in my clothes. I took it back to the barracks that night. And while everyone slept, I took it out. You have to understand how hungry I was. I wanted to eat it, like one would eat an apple. But I knew that if I did, I'd have nothing. So instead, as everyone slept, I rolled it between my hands to feel it. And then with my fingernail, I scratched it and I smelled. And what I smelled was not Auschwitz. What I smelled was the field outside of Haifa, in what was then called Palestine. I smelled that smell, for you see, I had a cousin who had moved there before the war. And he had written to me and said, here we grow oranges. And the smell of those oranges fills the air during winter. It is the smell of freedom. And for the moments that I smelled it, I was free. I couldn't eat it. It was too beautiful. I hid it in a hiding spot in the wall of the barracks. And each night I took it out. I said, I'll save it and smell it each night, but I will not eat it until after a very bad day. He said, well, you did not have to wait long in Auschwitz for a bad day. There came a day of selection when a guard stood with a bayonet in front of a long line, and he pointed right, left, right, left, right, left. Those who went to the right went back to the barracks. Those who went to the left went to the showers, and we knew they never returned. That night I gathered those with me, and I brought out to show them. And I held it for a moment, and I passed it around, and each one held it in their hands, rolling it, scratching it, smelling freedom for a moment. And when it came back to me, I peeled it, careful not to spill a drop. I gave each one a section. I closed my eyes and I ate mine, and I will tell you, nothing before or since has tasted so sweet. It was the taste of life, of hope, of freedom. Even afterwards, I kept the peels to smell them, like you would for Havdalah spices, the spices after the end of Shabbat, to remind you of the sweetness. And each night I smelled it, until finally spring came. And with spring, the snow melted, cracks appeared. Plants came through these cracks. To the guards, they were weeds. To us, they were colors. They were green. There was yellow, dandelions. And finally, the Allied army came, and I was free. He said, but you see that orange? It saved my life. As he said this, the bus stopped. He stood up with his shopping bag and said, young man, you must always remember the sweet things in life. He gave me the orange, and I looked at it, and I rolled it in my hands. And when I looked up, he was gone. Never saw him again. But I had the orange and the story and the lesson. And it's a story I love to pass on and share because it's important to remember the sweet things in life. And there's always sweet things in life to be found, even in the hardest times. And maybe this is why we tell stories, one of the reasons, to remind us that whatever we may read about in the craziness of the world going on, there is sweetness, there are good people, there are generous people. And I'll leave you with this last thought I heard from a rabbi at Yom Kippur. He said, there's a legend that when you're born, the divine breathes your first breath of life into you. You go through your life, you breathe in, you breathe out. Like the singer was saying, you learn to breathe. And she sang in that beautiful song about if I had a daughter. Lynn teaches us how to breathe in her work. So you breathe through your life, and then when you finally die, the last breath that comes out is that first breath that came in from the divine. And the hope is that between that breath you're given and the breath you give back, you can spend a life giving and receiving. It's a life well spent. I have to say that this weekend I feel rich in both ways, in being able to share stories with you and having the stories I'm hearing from you that are tapping you on the shoulder, people are sharing with me, the giving, the receiving. I'm so grateful to be here. Thank you for having me. Gure mile mache gut, as they say in Ireland.
Another round of applause for Joel. And of course, we probably need to clap for Joel and Libby also, right? We're about to go and have our intermission, but before we do that, I want to introduce you to a guy that I've just met recently. His name is Caleb Hubbard. Caleb is from NSN, and he's going to talk to you guys about some stuff. And then he's going to offer you a treat. So check out Caleb. Come on.
Hello, everyone. I'm not going to tell you a story. I have plenty, but that's not what I'm here for. If you have a white van, I'm just kidding. Hi, everyone. My name is Caleb Hubbard. I am currently the vice chair of the National Storytelling Network. Additionally, I am the co-chair of the National Storytelling Network Conference. I've talked to many of you throughout today, but if you don't know, the national conference, the United States is really big. It's actually in the greatest state of all, Texas. So this year it is in Canyon, Texas, and I want to have the biggest turnout. We are going to have amazing storytellers from the National Storytellers, and the host is going to be Michael. I expect you to wear a suit jacket there as well. And then Darlene is actually going to be who's on the Tejas board, is actually going to be our MC for the regional tellers, and we have some of our regional tellers here who are going to be there in July. Like Eldrina is somewhere in the audience, and Fran is somewhere out there, and I know I'm missing people. But we have a great line of storytellers. We have a lot of different workshops and sessions for you, but it's built for families. If you want to come just for the national storytellers, we have a bunch of different options that you can do. It's going to be in Canyon, which is just a jump, skip, and a hop, and for Texas, we know that means 6 hours that way. But I live in Houston, and I will be there. It's going to be an amazing time, and I want all of you to show up and go who can go. Now, I want to point out, I want a bunch of people there in Texas. So after this, I can tell you all about the conference, all about the things that we're going to do. One thing that I want to mention before I tell you about the treat that Michael talked about, is Canyon, Texas is just adjacent to Palo Duro Canyon, which is why Canyon's named Canyon. If you don't know, Palo Duro Canyon is the second largest canyon in the United States of America, only beat out by... Oh, good, you're all listening. I'm so proud of you all. If you're my students, A+. But we are going to have one of the sessions that will happen on Saturday morning, not in the afternoon because Texas gets hot in the summer. But we're going to only have 60 who can fit on a bus. But if you want to do one of those sessions, 60 people can get on a bus. It's air conditioned because Texas, it's hot, but you can go down. The bus will drive you to the canyon. You can see the beautiful canyon, and that'll be one of the sessions. That's only extra $8, so we try to make sure to do it. Trudy Hansen donated, I think the bus cost like $5,000 or whatever. She donated all of it, so you can only spend $8 on that. But we're going to have that and a bunch more things. I can tell you so much more. Clearly, I want to tell you more, but I'm going to make sure we go to intermission. But the last thing I want to tell you is, if you want to go to that, I want a bunch of Texas people to be there. I have a discount code for you. So real quick, it's Buffalo 2026. It's at West Texas A&M. They are the Buffaloes. Go Buffs. I'm an alumni there. But Buffalo 2026 is the discount code. I can give you this. It has the website QR code, has all the information on the dates. It's July 23rd to 26th. But if you go and you're here, take a discount code so you can save some money on registration, because as we all know, money is something that doesn't grow on trees. But if you have any questions, I'll be here for intermission, and I love to talk. Clearly, I will stop. But if you have any questions, thank you for letting me be here. Thanks, Michael.
What do I want?
Just a sec.
I still have some items and some things that still weren't picked up. But I really, as much as I like donating things, I'd rather donate to the storytelling than to the Goodwill. I mean, Goodwill's good, but please come and check it out. And we have some beautiful clothes over there. We'll give you a great price, but please do it because we have to close up shop tonight. Okay? Thank you.
Okay, guys, when I look out the audience, I'm sure most of you guys have had that test where they say, I'm going to name 3 things, and then I'm going to come back later and ask you and see if you can name those 3 things. Yeah, well, some of y'all don't know about that, but a lot of y'all gray hairs know about that one, okay? I'm going to tell you 3 things that I want you to remember, okay? And I'm going to come back later and see if you remember those 3 things, okay? And I'm going to make it real easy for you, okay? The first thing is buffalo, okay? The second is 20. And the third is 26. Buffalo 2026. Now, if you're like me, you'll probably get 2 out of 3 later on. But Buffalo 2026. Got it? Okay. Hey, guys, do me a favor. Caleb is our guest, okay? So during the intermission, make sure that you go see Caleb, talk to Caleb, and tell him how much we appreciate the fact that he even took time to come here and tell us about NSN. And tell him that you'll be glad to let him take you to dinner when you come out there in July, okay? With that, let's take our intermission. Come back in 10 minutes, guys, 10 minutes.